Hello, everybody, and I'm glad to be back. Been a while since we've done a Wednesday Live, but hoping to get back into the swing here. This week, I wanted to do this lovely view from Saint-Malo. It's on the northern coast of Normandy. Well, it's actually maybe in Brittany, actually. And right about where the English Channel and the Atlantic Ocean meet. And we're going to be working with this image, which has maybe a little bit too many interesting things tucked in here and there. And how can we sort of focus the image? A little bit about Saint-Malo. It's a walled city, a very old walled city. On the coast there. It was very, all these old castle-like buildings, and there's a walkway and a parapet on the wall that goes all the way around the city. And all of this old-looking architecture here probably was rebuilt. It was very heavily bombed during World War II. It's the setting of a wonderful novel by Anthony Doerr called All the Light We Cannot See. Definitely worth reading. So here's a large overhead picture of Saint-Malo. You can see the wall going around the city, and that's the harbor back there in the city proper. Now, we are going to be doing an image from right here, looking back towards this area there, which it's cut off a little bit from where I'm showing it. So we're standing up here, we're going to look back there. So what are we going to change? Well, basically, there's a wonderful kind of swoosh thing going on, and you've got this lovely tapering shape. So there's interesting clouds, the lighting is interesting, the color of the water is beautiful. So what I want to do is I want to eliminate this railing, which probably is much more modern. I want to leave that out, and I want to bring the tide in a little further, as if it were earlier. And I'm going to keep the shadows, so we're going to do a little time traveling here. I'm going to keep the cast shadows from this time, but I'm going to bring the tide in so I can get a little more of that blue-green. And here's the quick and dirty version that I did, but I'm happy, I like it. I want to add a sky like that that's more tapering down, just as this shape is, so it's not that sort of curdled band, and it's rather hard edged, so I want to soften it a bit. Again, bring the water up to get that lovely turquoise color. And this building, I think, is a little bit troublesome. It's creating maybe a little bit too much contrast. I did it that way in the thing. I thought, no, I think what I'm going to do is go more for where to go? Yeah, I'm going to go for a little earlier like that. And here you can see, this is leaning over the same place that when the tide goes out, it looks like ocean over here, but when the tide goes further out, magically appearing is this swimming area with a lifeguard and the whole 9 yards. So, wonderful, fascinating place. So, actually, when I was there, I leaned up against that little wall and looked back, and that's when I did. So we're doing a view from up here. So hi, Michael. All righty, the drawing. So I'm looking at this now and thinking that's interesting composition in and of itself. So first thing I'm going to do is find my horizon line, which is maybe just which will be the water line, and maybe just a little bit above half. So let's keep that. Run that out. The whole business ends at about the 2/3 mark, this part, the jetty, the breakwater there. So I'm just going to run a swooping line down there to help me find it, a swooping line back here, and I'm looking at that curve of the parapet. So very sloping, rounded kind of business. I think maybe it was made for cannonballs to deflect off of it or something. So then I'm going to maybe make it a little more specific. That's about the 3rd mark. It was very, very fun to walk around this place. And there's just, in the interior of the city, there's a fabulous cathedral and just spectacular place. So I'm going to bring this triangular roof in here. The chimney pots, make them perhaps different heights just for variety. There's a curvature to the facades of these buildings, so you have to kind of watch that. There's plenty of dormers on there. Or chimney pots. Be sure you space things like that in an irregular fashion and not Of course, I'm going to darken this all up when I get it to where I want it. Goes up and down and over and around. It's a fascinating place. I think that needs to be higher. So I have to get the front of this little bit of the walkway showing here. Again, I'm leaving off the rail. I'm going to run the water up to the beach here, and I want to have some of those lovely rocks. So I need to come up a little higher here, I think. Yeah, I do. Significantly higher. Parts of this wall were under repair, so there's a ramp coming down. That was from looked like a boat parking area of some sort. Or a boat rental area, maybe that's what it was. Some rocks coming out there, some rocks coming in here from the hidden beachfront. So what I'm trying to do is sort of echo the lovely curvature of this with the water there. So let's see. How do I want to do that? I'm going to leave out the cruise ship, I think. I'm not going to get terribly detailed with the buildings in here because they are in pretty much in shadow. So I'm going to try and keep them that way. How many? And most of this is going to occur in the painting of the shape. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking out the lines that I'm not wanting. I'm going to check my beach line. Needs to be a slant. That more of a slant. Okay. I think I'm okay there. Could that be a little thinner? Okay. That needs to almost make it up to there. Taking the eye in, and then we're going to take the eye out. So meaning that we're okay. I think. So what will be the plan? And when you're trying to do a thing like this, the best way to do it is just squint a lot and see what's actually left over when when you close one eye altogether. And oh, look at that, John, terrible tangent. Going to bring that piece of land out there. I can't have the top of this matching that, even though they almost do. That just won't work. So I'm going to bring it back behind the closer piece of land. Oh, good. I'm glad I saw that before I made a mess. You got to watch for those tangents. They will do things like that that you don't want to happen. So the plan for painting it will be lights to darks as is standard, softer shapes to harder shapes. I'm going to make a judgment as to the palette, which is going to be most of the vivid colors will be in the water, the turquoises and the aquas and the blue violets, the sky and the water. And it's going to be mostly earth tones and darks for the buildings and man-made things. There's some greens in those amazing rocks there. I'm probably going to say that the water, with the exception of the area here where it's shallow, and will be shallower when we bring the tide in a little further, that it is darker than the sky. So I'm going to have a lighter sky. So the three value sections are going to be a sky, which will be dark value will be the things sticking up out of the earth. The medium value will be the earth, and parts of it, except for the beach, will be near in value to that. And then the sky will be the lighter of the two. Always with this, there are embedded lights within a dark area or embedded within a medium area. But mainly the medium value, and I'm thinking of the water back here, is, when you squint, virtually or near the same value as the darks in here. Gets lighter here, yes. Gets a little darker up there, yes. But on the whole, that's how it'll be. So I'm going to mix up. I'm going to use my big brush here. It's a number probably 4, or some would call it a 14. This is my rosemary that's old enough to drive, and in a few years will be old enough to drink. So that's how long those brushes last. So, ultramarine, maybe mixed with a little bit of cerulean. I'm doing the sky, the blue of the sky. Off to the side of that, I'm going to take some of it. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna, a wee bit of burnt sienna, maybe a wee bit of the quinacridone rose. That's too much. Let's mop some of that out. I want a violety gray for the bases of the clouds. Very pale. And I'll probably paint them first, bring them up from the horizon, bring the blues down to meet them, and leave bits of white for the clouds. So I may even, let's make that stronger blue. It'll need to be. And because this is a stopping point, because there's a lot of darks in here, then I can move on to the lighter colors in here and in there. So let's see, let's have a bit of this coming down to the horizon. Perhaps leave some lights in there. Again, I don't have to worry if I get into the buildings because they're going to be darker. Now the blue. rinsing that, getting into the blue. I'm going to bring it down, and where I want a softer edge, such as down here, I'm going to rinse that, blot it a little bit, and roll it. Oops, it doesn't, just to soften that, maybe blot it a bit more. Maybe take a bit of the grayish colors. These are very runny consistency paints. Soften these edges because I want everything to stay well behind these sharp shapes here. Now I'm looking at this and straight away I'm going in, notice I'm going into the paint itself. I'm going to come into the upper portions of the sky here and just let that bleed in to what has been painted. Maybe I'll even tip it so that it comes down. The reason I went into here rather than in there again, because if I'd have put this runny mix into this surface which was already runny, it would have displaced it. And I would have come up, rather than the darker blue that I wanted, I would have come up with a lighter blue, lighter spot, because it would have chased the existing pigment out. So I think that's good. Maybe I'll just put a little bit of that blue into this so here we go, I'm putting runny into runny. You see how it disperses? I'm doing that because I want these closer clouds to be a wee bit darker, particularly the bottoms of them. Than their tops. Squeezing that brush out, mopping up the excess here. Can think about now the lighter areas in the building itself. Just take that runny blue, take it over here into this. Let's get a little bit of burnt umber or burnt sienna to gray it up. Sort of a bluish gray. And let's even put a little bit of turquoise in it. Just hit in here. And if some of the sky comes into it or whatever. Now, these are going to be the lighter spots in this mess. Now I'm going to put a little bit of more brown in it. And when we get these dark shapes in around that, it's going to appear to be actually quite light. So as I go down here, I'm going to mix a little bit more of the warmer tones into this blue. Here I may get into, I've got a Viridian on the palette. You need it for these weird greens. Raw umber, Viridian. Those rocks. Now back to some blue and some sienna. Oh, too much sienna. Let's take it over into the blue. More blue. Looks dark now, but maybe let's get a little bluer in here. These are stone. They are things that are not typically vivid colors, and we're saving the vivid colors for the water. A little bit of that out there too, isn't there? Oh, you know what I didn't save? I didn't get in here. That's a very dark area. As is runny mixes here. As is the front portion of that. Down here. Again, if I go in here, if it creates a bit of a blossom, that's not such a terrible thing, because it is a man-made material and I don't want it to be too stone. I don't want it to look like painted wood. Now, I'm going to go into the beach and that, so I'm going to bringing in some yellow ochre into this to that. It looked like a different kind of stone to me. Going to mop that up a bit. Squeeze the brush out and it becomes a mop. Load it with paint or water, it becomes a brush. Let's get some of this Naples yellow. Maybe a wee bit of burnt sienna. Or transparent iron oxide. Too much, so more water. Get it a little more yellowish so that there's some variation in that as well. Let it mingle with this stuff in here. Stopping at what will be my water line, and I'm going to leave a bead. I hope it'll stay. Maybe I'll make the walkway here a little lighter, so I've rinsed it, squeezed it, and I'm pulling out, mopping. I'll just wet that edge. Now we're going to start mixing these colors for the sea. So where the turquoise and viridian, where the water meets the sand here, it's kind of greenish. I'm going to go back in and get some, leaving a wet edge so that I can begin mixing in more turquoise and maybe a bit of cerulean. So where it gets deeper, let's get a little more viridian because we're coming closer to us. Over here, I might even, see, I'm runny into runny. I'm going to get very, very soft edges. And I hope this edge stays wet, so I'm just going to wet it. And if I get some wobble or variation in there, I'm looking forward to that, because there is some, when the rock goes underwater, it turns an amazing color. So virtually straight ultramarine. With maybe a little bit of red in it. I don't worry about the jetty or any of those other things or the land mass because it's actually darker. leaving a bead or a wet edge. And now I'm going to start smuggling in some cerulean and turquoise. If I get a little white skip, that's okay. Some dark rocks there, that doesn't matter. Let's go into our Viridian lighter mix. Okay. Rinse, blot, turquoise, and Viridian. So I'm going to put some spots in here like this, which will kind of blossom, and I'm going to hope that they turn into those sorts of things. I may also come in with the Naples yellow to exacerbate that issue. And we're officially in the holy mess stage. Okay, now we can think about our mediums. Going to switch to a brush which holds less paint but is about that size. So going from the 14/4 to the Oriental. So the sizing on different nationalities with mops is rather weird. So a 4 and a 14 is about the same. So just think add 10 if it looks like a low number. We're some Viridian, ultramarine, a little bit of red. That looks more or less dry enough. I'm going to try and do the headland. Maybe leave some little skips here and there to suggest buildings. I'm going to switch to cerulean and that same mix to get a little variety. I find that when I paint things like this that are long and linear, oops, got into my water. If I can modulate the color, not so much the value of it, but the hue, I can usually get something that looks a little more correct. Now, out of that same mix, I'm going to make it a little thicker. Ultramarine, Viridian, raw umber or burnt umber would do. I'm getting a kind of a brownish, greenish color. Oh, I'm getting some spray. These little rocks out there. Let's see, where else can I? Rinsing it and squeezing it. Gonna pull a line there, and what I'm doing is I'm actually mopping out some of the blue paint, and maybe it'll look like breaking water. That'll have to be done with whites. So we're into our mediums and darks now. I'll need that to dry before I put the breakwater in. This, of course, is going to get darker when we go into the darker colors up here. There is the rock area over here, because that area is very moist. I'm going to touch in some and it'll lighten a bit, and we'll go in later to make it a bit darker. In here there are some very strong greenish, bluish, brownish mixes. And I almost think it might be worth doing them. Oh, a few down here. I'm going to smear that. I'm going to do it after I come in with the darker colors there. Hi, Becky. Do I need to? Probably need to dry this mess. If I go in here, it feels cool. So cover your ears. Here comes the hairdryer. There goes the eraser. Okay. Now I'm going to take the eraser and I'm going to eliminate any pencil lines that will come up. If we painted over them, they won't, but just so that they're not there. That's an oddball. We'll have to do something about that. Now I'm going to think about might want to glaze of the Naples yellow down there. We'll see. Strong mix of ultramarine blue. So this is slower moving paint. Going to put into it some transparent oxide red / burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of alizarin substitute, the quinacridone rose. I want it to lean sort of bluish violet, so let's go to a lighter blue, the cerulean, and a little bit of the alizarin. And let's turn this into something about the same consistency, but a little browner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be applying these two colors, and then I'm going to be, at time to time, dipping into other colors to bleed into those to get the effect I'm looking for. So, paler version of that with a little bit of iridium in it. See, straight away I'm doing it. Well, I'm going to paint right through that because there are darker portions of it. Below it, I'm going to come in with the browner mix. Maybe throw in a little bit of the bluer mix at the bottom so that it's slightly irregular. Try to leave a light spot down there if I can. chimney pots. See if I can leave a thin line. Suggest the roof getting some light. Okay, now to the front of the building, maybe add a little more cerulean blue. Bring it right to that edge, let it soften and bleed together. Working off wet edges here. Above that, I'm going to get into the browner mix. And coming down for the roof. Try to leave the appearance of some dormers there. The bluer mix, didn't make enough, John, didn't make enough. Hit into the bigger portion of the shape. And then pull out to the smaller, more detailed portions of it. Like chimney pots, that sort of thing. Unless it's something that light is hitting, I really don't want to show too much. Let's put some Viridian into this, maybe a little turquoise. We're getting further away, so there could be some variation. Again, I look into the shape to see the biggest, most blunt, undefined area of it. Let's get a little more Viridian, a little more turquoise, maybe just the tiniest bit more water. Now, more of the brown. Maybe a little bit of the alizarin. So I'm not modifying the value of these areas so much as I'm modifying the hue, character. And I might make it bluer as it gets to the bottom. So up to our little cropping of rocks there. I think I got away with that, maybe. The cars and boats here. Side of that. Side of that. I ran into the cutest little British kid painting there, down here. must have been all of 3 years old. Very fascinating. Bit of a cast shadow from any of this. Okay, now I've got a slightly lighter rampart slanted area along here. And then above that is the darker, more blue-violet. Cerulean and alizarin, yeah. As I get into this, I'm going to put a little bit of turquoise in it to try and express the reflected light coming up from that hot sand. Leave some light skips that possibly that could be something. Now, there are stopping points along here. Oops. Ooh, come back. For stuff that where the thing goes in and out. So I can paint that area and then do something next to it. So I'm going to get a more brownish mix with a little bit of cerulean. For the shadow, cast shadow, oh, that's too brown. A little more of the blue. Blue and brown, yeah. Now, back to the mix of ultramarine, alizarin, and some transparent iron oxide, maybe some cerulean. Blues, browns, and reds. You have a lot of choices in this area. More turquoise as I get to the bottom. Stopping point here, so I can go to my raw umber viridian and ultramarine for these dark rocks that butt up against the city wall. I'm hoping that some of those colors within that mix will separate so that when I bring these colors down to them, they will melt in. There's a doorway there too. A little more green as I come out into the more illuminated area. I have to get a relatively straight edge along there. Let's get a little bit of that Nicolazzo. This looks green, but that color is actually a amber sort of yellow. There's going to be some of that over here too. Maybe there as well. Comes out right to the water. Let's go back to the browner bluer mix because it does variegate. Now as it's going into the water here, I'm going to go with this and maybe a little bit of that. Might even be a good place for a splatter. Or a smear. I want to get the underwater look. Let's just get into some straight up viridian and turquoise. Further it's underwater, the more it's going to change in its hue and its value. And you see what I'm doing here? I'm trying to lead my eye back to that, which is pointing us back here. And if I'm lucky, I'll get away with it. Now this color is also good for some of the darker trees back here. Maybe not that dark. That portion of the headland is a little closer than this portion. And we can take just some straight cerulean, kind of slow moving, and create a little bit more depth there. Okay, let's even put a little of that in here. That was coming a bit too far forward. I think this is dry enough that I can paint that jetty. Raw umber, ultramarine blue. Shakespeare stroke, "'Twere done, 'twere best done quickly." I didn't do it quickly. So, up here, I'm going to touch some, just right from the pocket, ultramarine blue into that. So it'll change the hue and it'll also re-wet that edge so that when I come down with this color, it'll merge nicely. And then we'll begin to get into some of the little finessey things up in there. Blue mostly. I'm going to go for cerulean, bit of alizarin, maybe a bit of turquoise. Now, I made a mistake there. I should have pushed into the big area rather than trying to address the contour, but I think I'll be all right. See, I should have put it into the middle of this space and then come to this sort of stuff. Now the front of that dormer is darker, so I'm going to have to put some brown into my blue. Oh, look at that. Rested my finger in something. Let's see if we can repair that. Some of that. Put some brownish greenish at the tip, the edge. Address it like a mistake and make it look like I meant to do that. Okay, more chimney pots. Don't want to get too crazy in here. Okay, now I need to address this area up here. I think, well, I need to bridge this into the rock business a bit better. There are some rocks coming out here that I want. Let's see. Well, I can already tell that I need to deepen that, so that's going to be a glaze later. While this is still a bit of a glisten on it, I can pull out with a blotted off brush some lines like that, or I can put in some darks like that. In here. That's in shade. I'm going to turn on my fan here, which should come on in a minute. A little more variation in there. Soften that with some Viridian. Okay, let's see, getting in here. This area in here, more shade. That's going to be ultramarine. burnt sienna. Let's make one corner of this puddle more burnt sienna and the other corner more bluish. Starting blue at the top, going brown at the bottom. Let's variegate it. Oh, too loud. Let's get rather brownish. Maybe even a bit of yellow ochre towards that front edge. And just while it's damp, I'm going to touch in the runny into runny, or runny / slow moving into the principle being bringing the same consistency paint into the area just painted so that it will basically disappear or disperse. Now, where'd that go? There we go. Still damp. A bit more yellow, well, yellow ochre. Leaving some of the previous color behind for mortar. And this nondescript gray violet blue for flagstones. Pathway. Now this stuff, boy oh boy. Where the cannonballs bounce. Or I think that's what it's for. So I'm going to splatter a little bit of that sort of runnyish blue in here. And it'll melt in a textural way. Fingers crossed. Okay. Oh, thank you, Vicki. So glad you could tune in. Now, that I want to glaze a little bit later, but I'm going to make a slightly darker mark for the window. I'm going to give the beach some attention. I'm going to mop this up, clear out an area. Oops, what did I find? I do. Some maples, some yellow ochre, maybe a bit of dirty sienna. I want to dry brush some texture into the beach. There's a line where the The extreme portion of the tide comes up most days and leaves flotsam and jetsam. Maybe I'll put a little of that down here too. That needs to be darker, doesn't it? Let's raw umber, ultramarine. The surprise swimming area. Try to make my rocks look a little rockier. I'm going to do a turquoise and viridian glaze here, which I'm going to start with water. So damp brush so that this edge is soft. Then I go to the paint. And I get I hope, softer edge. Turquoise, more viridian. Leaving possibly bits of it behind. Okay, yep, that's what I wanted. Now, a little bit of that ochre color on that. Nondescript blue-brown, a little bit of alizarin. To glaze this, it's just jumping out on its own a little too much. Try to leave a little light edge. To maybe suggest the... Oh, hello, Judy. Yeah, wasn't that a wonderful place? Oh my gosh. And I don't think we explored 10% of it. So now I'm going to put in some strong darks here and there at the base of the wall. Perhaps at the top too, where there's hard, deep shadow. I think I need some variation in that area. This has become a little bit of a I'm going to put some people now, which are basically just going to be little dark blips. I should put a guy out here. There's always people crawling out. Well, they would be coming up here too, wouldn't they? Yeah. There were a lot of people there that day, that was for sure. And now, yeah, I know what you mean, Kathy. It's so fun when you have that shallow water and the sand underneath, and then you get these weird, wonderful colors, and you wonder, where's that from? I think I might, that's a little flat. I might put a bit of the same stuff I glazed this with in a lot of water. just to send that back a little further. And miscellaneous brownishness. In these closer areas. I think I'm going to go for a bit more window action. Shimmy that close to us. I know there's not a window there, but looks like it wants it. Okay, the portions of the wall that come out. And I think I'm getting close to where if I'm careful, I should just leave it alone. Let's get out the white and put in some accents. Going to get a small brush, pointy brush, stick right into the nozzle of the tube. So that I can suggest little people up here, down here. And using again that thick paint, I'm going to make some breaking water at the shore's edge or around the rocks. I prefer the white paint right out of the tube will dry to the same refractive index as the paper, whereas if you dilute it, it won't. So I prefer to do things like this way, because if I were to mask that or try to paint around it, this way I get to decide where I want it or where it's going to occur. So in the end, not find out that the place I picked wasn't where it needed to be. Okay. A little bit more action up here. People. Possibly suggest some building things in there. Top of the building, maybe not. Okay, let's peel it and see what we get. I highly recommend the book by Anthony Doerr. It's a very wonderful story. They also made a movie of it, which was as good as they could do in trying to stick all of that into a couple hours. But you might try watching the movie. It's called All the Light We Cannot See, and then read the book, because it'll help you with that character situation where you've got multiple characters and the author is jumping back and forth to different time periods, future and past, and can get confusing. So on the whole, yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I think maybe if I'm careful a little later, I'd like to make that cloud shadow there a wee bit darker, but I think I've got the sunny look that I was hoping for. So, and the reflected light from the sand and the water and all those things like that. So I'm so glad to be back doing this again, but my show is, I finished the work for it. I might pop a few extras in. I might put this one in. It opened last Friday. It's up to view in Burlington. And the reception is on the 16th, and it would be fun to see everybody there. We're going to have wonderful refreshments, themed beverages and charcuterie plates themed to fit the locales that are shown. So thank you, Pat. Oh, what kind of white am I using out of the tube? It's just titanium, big tube of titanium white. Watercolor, M. Graham. So anybody's will work. It's just the trick is use it right out of the tube and put it on like an impasto. I wouldn't try to do it for clouds. It's good for breaking water. It's good for little blips like that because these things are too small for me to paint around and not lose the lovely wash there. And also, at this scale, this is 11 by 15, 140-pound cold press. If I were to put masking fluid on there, it would. It always looks like you use masking fluid. Oh, Michael, that would be wonderful to see you. Yes, it's at 5 to, I think, 8, something like that. Oh yeah, Kathy, the trick is don't dilute it. When you need a white, just use it in impasto because as soon as you mix water with it, it actually becomes kind of a light, transparent gray or gray that you can see through. Yeah, oh, always, and everyone, just remember, if you shoot and you have questions about materials or things that I did, that sort of thing, feel absolutely free to shoot me questions, and they usually pop up on my feed, and I can answer them. So, fun in San Malo, wonderful place. Visit if you can. Enjoy the movie or the book by Anthony Doerr. And I will see everybody next week.